In 1917, America, a craze for luminous goods, glowing watch dials, clock faces, and toys, rushed into factories. At the U.S. Radium Corporation plant in Orange, New Jersey, from 1917 through the mid-1920s, dozens of young women were hired as dial painters. They practiced lip pointing, shaping fine luminous paint with their mouths to a razor edge, convinced the material was harmless. One of them was Grace Fryer, an every woman from New Jersey who earned steady pay and took pride in her work. The central tension was simple: steady wages and skilled craftsmanship versus an invisible, insidious hazard: radioactive paint that would later eat away at flesh and bone, causing ghastly, necrotic injuries. By the early 1920s, the human cost had become impossible to ignore at the U.S. Radium Corporation plant in Orange, New Jersey. Painters began suffering searing jaw pain, loose and blackening teeth, and crippling fatigue. Workers returned home gaunt, with receding gums as osteomyelitis and jaw necrosis set in. Teeth crumbled and jaws weakened. Supervisors and company literature reassured employees the luminous paint was harmless and even encouraged lip pointing when shaping brushes, while company doctors dismissed complaints. Grace Fryer, who worked at the Orange plant, watched coworkers fall ill and sought help from local dentists and physicians. She accumulated mounting medical bills and endured repeated extractions that did nothing to stop the decay. With insurance and compensation denied, families were pushed into poverty. The identical horrific pattern of injury made clear this was not bad luck but a single toxic cause. And that realization pushed Grace toward the legal fight that would emerge in 1927. Medical reports began to converge. Dentists and physicians described cratered bone, fist-sized abscesses, and the ghastly radium jaw, a wasting osteonecrosis caused by ingesting luminous paint. Pathologist Harrison Martlin and industrial hygienist Alice Hamilton documented bone lesions and systemic anemia, showing how radium's violent affinity for calcium concentrated it in bones. The U.S. Radium Corporation mounted a slick public relations campaign, denying responsibility, defending the practice of lip pointing, shaping brushes with the lips, as safe, and hiring lawyers to stonewall claims. In 1927, Grace Fryer sued the company in New Jersey, recruiting 5 co-plaintiffs who carried identical mutilating injuries from painting watch dials. Newspapers, muckraking journalists, and public health advocates amplified their story, turning private agony into a national scandal. As scientific evidence mounted and public outrage swelled, depositions, lab tests, and brutal courtroom scrutiny pushed the fight toward a climactic reckoning. Inside courtrooms and sterile laboratories, the truth bled through procedure. Depositions, sworn affidavits, and painstaking assays showed radium lodged in bone and in exhumed remains. Pathologist Harrison Martland and industrial hygienist Alice Hamilton presented radiographs and measurements tracing radium's fixation to the jaw and long bones, translating ghastly necrosis into hard data. Grace Fryer and 5 co-plaintiffs gave wrenching testimony about searing jaw pain, fist-sized abscesses, teeth crumbling, and faces hollowed by anemia, while company lawyers responded with delays and technical objections. Scientists demonstrated radioactivity in luminous watch dials and in the women's tissues, making corporate denials sound hollow. Newspapers published photos and transcripts, public sympathy hardened into outrage, and each legal maneuver only tightened the noose, pushing the case toward an unavoidable reckoning. The stage was set for a final courtroom showdown that would reshape labor law. In 1928, after months of depositions and harrowing testimony about searing jaw pain, gangrenous bone, and teeth crumbling to blackened stumps, Grace Fryer and 5 co-plaintiffs forced the United States Radium Corporation to settle publicly in New Jersey. The company agreed to pay each woman $10,000, provide a $600 yearly annuity, and cover their medical bills, effectively conceding responsibility without a formal guilty verdict. The settlement shattered corporate denials, validated victims of the necrotic radium jaw, and marked a turning point that helped make corporate accountability legally plausible. After the settlement, the necrotic, ghastly evidence forced a reappraisal of occupational disease. Policymakers accelerated recognition of workplace radiation injuries, strengthened workers' compensation and safety regulations, and pushed for scientific protocols to measure radioactivity. Grace Fryer and the other victims became reluctant catalysts. Their disfigured bodies and testimony drove legal and regulatory reform. Memory and justice demand that we honor their sacrifice as the foundation of modern occupational health.